Naval warfare in the Crusades. How the Mediterranean became a battleground. Imagine the thunder of war drums echoing across the waves, crossbows loaded, Greek fire primed to ignite, and warships charging through the Mediterranean with flags of the cross fluttering in the wind. This wasn't just war, it was holy war at sea. What if I told you the Crusades weren't just fought on land, but turned the Mediterranean into one of the bloodiest battlegrounds in history? In today's episode, we're diving into a forgotten chapter of the Crusades, the naval battles that raged across the Mediterranean, from Byzantine ports to the shores of the Levant. We'll uncover how fleets of crusaders, pirates, and Islamic empires clashed in a war that reshaped sea power forever. This isn't your typical tale of knights and castles. This is about fire at sea, betrayal on the waves, and maritime warfare that changed the fate of empires. Hey, history lovers! If you love deep dives into forgotten stories, shocking truths, and historical warfare, hit that subscribe button, ring the bell so you never miss an upload, and give this video a thumbs up if you enjoy it. The Crusades. Most people picture knights in shining armor, clashing with Saracens under the desert sun. But here's what's often left out. The Mediterranean Sea wasn't just a trade route. It became a chessboard of war, with fleets fighting for control of supply lines, strongholds, and spiritual dominance. Naval warfare wasn't just a sideshow, it was central to the success or failure of crusader campaigns. To understand how the Mediterranean became a crucible of crusader conflict, we need to step back into the turbulent 11th century. The First Crusade was launched in 1095 after Pope Urban II's famous call at the Council of Clermont, urging Christian knights to reclaim the Holy Land from Muslim control. While the focus of the Crusades has often been on the overland marches and legendary sieges in places like Jerusalem, Antioch, and Edessa, there was an equally vital dimension unfolding at sea. The Mediterranean was not just a backdrop, it was a strategic lifeline. At the heart of this were the rising naval republics of Venice, Genoa, and Pisa, cities that had evolved into maritime superpowers. These were not mere trading hubs, they were political and military juggernauts, with fleets of well-armed ships capable of projecting force across continents. Meanwhile, the Islamic world also maintained robust naval capabilities, especially the Fatimid Caliphate in Egypt, the Seljuk Turks, and later the Ayyubid dynasty under Saladin. These powers controlled key ports such as Alexandria, Acre, and Tripoli, vital points on the map for any army attempting to operate in the Holy Land. The control of these ports and sea lanes determined who could wage war, move troops, send reinforcements, and ultimately who would win or lose. The Mediterranean became a battlefield not by accident, but because it was the lifeblood of the Crusader machine. And both sides knew it. The earliest indication of how critical naval warfare would become came during the siege of Antioch between 1097 and 1098. As the Crusaders besieged the city, they soon found themselves encircled and starving. Morale plummeted. Desertion and death loomed. And then, salvation came not from the land, but the sea. A fleet of Genoese ships arrived, carrying fresh troops, supplies, and siege equipment. That intervention likely saved the crusade. Without naval support, the Crusaders might have collapsed before even reaching Jerusalem. And this pattern repeated again and again. Maritime powers began to play an outsized role in Crusader planning and operations. The Second and Third Crusades leaned even more heavily on naval forces. Richard the Lionheart, one of the most famous Crusader kings, didn't just march to war, he sailed. His navy dominated the eastern Mediterranean, landing at key points along the Levantine coast and enabling a series of rapid conquests, most notably at Acre. These ships weren't just troop transports, they were armed and fortified, carrying cavalry, war machines, and supplies critical to sustaining long sieges. Meanwhile, Muslim forces, especially under Saladin, began to understand and counter this growing Christian sea power. They improved naval fortifications, launched their own fleets, and employed raiding tactics to disrupt Crusader supply lines. Battles raged along coastlines and at sea, often in brutal, close-quarters combat. The age of holy war had spilled fully onto the waves, and it was only getting started. As the Crusades evolved, so did the ambitions and the tactics of those involved. The Fourth Crusade marked a dramatic shift in priorities, led in large part by the cunning and opportunism of Venice. Initially recruited to provide ships for a campaign to the Holy Land, the Venetians redirected the crusading army for their own interests. In 1204, that fleet turned its might not on Muslim strongholds, but on Constantinople, the heart of Eastern Christianity. The sack of Constantinople was a seismic betrayal, leaving the Byzantine Empire crippled and forever altering the balance of power in the region. It was also a stark demonstration of how naval supremacy could reshape not just battles, but entire empires. The Mediterranean had become more than a theater of war. It was a tool of empire building. Warships were now designed for more than speed. They were armored, fitted for siege, and sometimes even carried Greek fire, a terrifying incendiary weapon that could ignite on water and was nearly impossible to extinguish. Naval battles became sophisticated operations involving blockades, amphibious assaults, and coordinated sieges. Sea power meant control over the Holy Land's ports, and with it, the ability to feed, reinforce, and protect Crusader holdings. Without fleets, the Crusader states, like the Kingdom of Jerusalem, were isolated, vulnerable, and doomed. Maritime dominance was no longer a luxury. It was everything. So next time you hear about the Crusades, remember this. It wasn't just knights charging into battle. It was entire fleets, empires afloat, clashing across the Mediterranean. A holy war fought on waves. The Mediterranean didn't just host the Crusades, it was the true arena. And it forever changed the way warfare was waged at sea. If you found this video eye-opening, hit that like button, subscribe for more hidden histories, and drop a comment below. What's the most shocking thing you learned today? Or tell us, what battle should we cover next?